out and, lifting weights and doing all sorts of things. How long have you been doing that?
I would say I really found working out and being physically active probably about 2005. And that journey began because I started having some health issues at the age of 2021, high blood pressure, and almost maxing out in size at the store that I shopped at. So I knew I had to do something. And though it's been quite a journey, it just started with walking and it progressed from there.
How was that experience for you? Meaning, oftentimes we get information about ourselves and it could be negative, because we know we may not be doing what we could be doing to accentuate the best version of ourselves. You had an opportunity to either uh, deny it and keep going your way or do something about it. So it was kind of a decision that you made. How was that experience?
It was a very scary experience for sure to be so young and not having had kids at that time, knowing that my health was already in jeopardy and in danger. And also, the internet was not, as I would say, popping. The internet was not popping back then. So I was scared essentially, not only for my life, but there was the fear of where am I going to find clothes that fit so that I could be covered appropriately. And that is really what set the fire underneath me to make positive changes. And I really didn't know how at the time. I just knew I needed to do something.
Yeah, there's always a reason that that catapults us to do certain things in our lives, especially when people go out to do great things. You're doing some great things in your life since that time. Imagine if you didn't take that challenge, where your life would be right now. So that was even a great thing in itself, and the people who you're able to impact as a result of you making that decision to become a healthier version of yourself. And so that's, wow, you'd be commended for that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I wouldn't change anything about this journey because I believe that is what helped me to develop a passion for helping others find and see a way out when it's not always clear.
Yeah. So, what was childhood like for you? How was that experience in childhood?
Very interesting you asked that question because I did not have the best childhood, I would say. I was primarily raised by my mother, and up until I was 10, she was a single mom, and she had her own set of challenges. I later came to realize that affected what kind of mom she was. And I just know in some of the challenge that I faced in her mothering me that I did not want to duplicate those challenges. I very much wanted to deviate away from that path so that I could be healthier for myself. And knowing when I eventually had kids, I did not want to be the same kind of mom to my kids that my mother had been to me. And so it also is what lit the fire under me to become a therapist as well, is because there were so many family dynamics that were unhealthy within my own family. And I wanted to help others in a way that I knew I couldn't necessarily help for my family. So I'm like, I know I can set others on a better path than what my own family has taken. And that is really what led to me wanting to become a therapist.
So, how old were you when you realized that you wanted to become a therapist?
I would say I was about 17 or 18. And at that point, Of course, individuation has happened, differences have been identified, but I just knew at that time if there was a level of support that was in place for my mother and my mother's mother as they endured their personal challenges, then our outcomes might have been healthier, where the relationships and bonds within our family are ones that are healthy rather than damaged to the degree that they are.
Yeah, our bodies is a filter. So every experience that we've had in our lives, it comes through our body experience. So often when we have different challenges in our bodies, it's some emotional component attached to it. So I know you are a therapist and you understand this, and to try to convey this message to the people that you're serving and being able to help, how has that experience been?
That experience is one that can be challenging, not only for the individuals that I'm helping, but as far as a therapist helping each individual understand the connection, and that while we go through life and we have these experiences, just because we don't acknowledge the emotional connection that these experiences cause doesn't mean that we're not emotionally affected. So it's part of working with an individual is bringing awareness to how these experiences have affected them emotionally, and how because of those emotional changes it shows up in how we move through relationships, how we treat our children, what kind of employee and worker that we are. And so it's very important, once the emotional awareness is there, that the person understands that in certain situations they're more likely to react a certain way based on their history and their personal experiences and how it made them feel emotionally. And through healing those emotional wounds or improving their emotions, they're able to basically regain control of how they think about certain experiences to start to change some of those outcomes.
So, what are some ways you are able to help people increase their emotional awareness during the therapeutic process?
In the therapeutic process, when individuals are recounting some of their personal history and their affect may not match. So what I see on their face does not match the weight of what they're discussing and what they're sharing, which is very heavy and it's very deep, is helping them to understand how just easing or passing and overlooking their own emotions has become a way to kind of deal and get through some of the most challenging situations. And for those who are deeply emotionally wounded or traumatized, it's the understanding that their emotions are basically bursting at the seams. And these individuals talk about, not being able to control their emotions and crying and becoming overwhelmed with emotion about the smallest things. And in helping them to recognize, okay, do you believe that it's a lack of acknowledgement of emotions over time that has contributed to this buildup where you're bursting at the seams to express what needs to be expressed? Helps the individual to understand that even though they're denying these emotions, even though they're not acknowledging them, not paying attention, that these emotions still exist, and why it's important to express these emotions as they arise in a healthy manner. Because sometimes expression of emotions can be very unhealthy. It can come out as anger and lashing out at people over the smallest of things, or for something that doesn't warrant that high or heavy of a response, while for others it's more emotional, where it's crying or it's not really feeling like the individual can move through their day or their functions because they're overwhelmed with their emotions.
Why do you believe some people have such a high reaction to emotionally to certain things, like you were saying, like some people may cry or express anger, like overboard, almost overboard, because I believe that we can do things, you can respond emotionally, but when it goes like over, it's not as effective for the individual, especially if they're interacting with someone else.
Right. And I think what contributes to how some individuals express those emotions is very environment dependent. And that can be past or present. When we are adolescents and as children, how people around us express their emotions or don't express them becomes a part of our fibers of being. And so we learn through who the people who raise us and through our parents that it's okay to express emotions in a healthy manner, or we don't talk about emotions in our family. So that leads to holding on to things, and what leads to that building up of emotions. And ultimately, if the individual is in a supportive environment, in their current homes as adults, they may be more likely to be emotional about it versus an environment that's highly stressful, where the individuals around them are not supportive, don't really listen to anything that the individual has to say, and disregards or demeans that person's feelings or their thoughts of expression. So I really think that the anger expression can be rooted in how the person was raised and what was permissible and what was not, and kind of seeing what happened around them to model, okay, when I'm feeling this way, this is how I let these emotions out, even if it's wrong or right. And it's very unfortunate when that happens, but the individuals who present with anger, sometimes it's related to they have received charges. So they've broken the law in some way, and now they're seeking treatment to help manage their anger. Versus for some, it's an ultimatum within their family that you've got to get your anger under control or else. And in those scenarios, the individuals are more likely to do that self-reflection to learn how to learn how to better express their emotions in a healthy manner and not letting it build up where it becomes explosive and out of control.
Is there anything that someone could begin doing now who may feel that they're not being heard in their present life and, in their present circumstances because of, growing up, they weren't heard. They don't feel that they were heard and nurtured in that way. Them as an adult now, is there anything that they can begin doing to begin dealing with that situation?
That's a really good question. And ultimately, when people are not heard, and I mean, that's as a child, as an adolescent, as an adult, um, there comes to be an understanding that their thoughts and feelings are not important. So, with that message being internalized, the individual starts to believe that what I say and what I feel is not important. And then to some degree, there's a mute. That person mutes themselves where they dismiss their own thoughts and their own feelings because for the longest it wasn't important to anyone else. So for individuals who have these challenges, it's very important to understand that we are the experts on ourselves. So if we are muting our own thoughts and feelings, it teaches people around us to do the same. Because if you don't think your thoughts and feelings are important, why would the next person? So it's very important for that individual to recognize and accept that what I have to say and what I feel is very important. And because of that, I'm going to express it in a way that is going to have me be heard, where it's not about, oh my goodness, I can't believe he or she flipped the table or punched the wall, where it becomes more about what the person did and not about the emotional state the person was in before they got there. And, while we may express ourselves, what we cannot control is other people's acceptance of the information or how they receive the information. So, depending on when we express and how we express ourselves in a healthy manner, if the people around us do not receive that information and make changes to appropriately respect boundaries and feelings and what that person has to say or what they think, it leads to some personal decisions needing to be made about whether or not these individuals belong in the support circle.
True. So you touched on this moments ago when you talked about growing up. So often, the things that become rooted in an individual is being implanted during the infancy stages of their lives from 0 to 5. A lot of things are learned and imprinted on the subconscious mind. So we are constantly learning through our caregivers and the various people who interact with us during the early stages. How do you feel the subconscious, and that's the main time the subconscious mind is really imprinted during that time frame. So I know that must be challenging as a clinician to work with people who don't know why they're doing certain things. Sometimes people are aware why, of the things that they're doing, but they don't understand the root cause.
Right.
Have you been able to help people to go back to the early stages and to begin to understand why, the reason why, and then then they can begin to take ownership of their lives where they are and not blame someone? Because as long as I'm able to blame someone, I am at a disadvantage because I can't change my life. But if I can take responsibility of where I am right now, then I can begin to do things to change my life.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's really in therapy, what the goal is. I mean, these individuals come for a particular challenge and they know, okay, I keep doing this, or I keep having failed relationships, or I'm tired of individuals not treating me like I matter, and helping these individuals understand that there is a history to that. There is, a reason why there's certain individuals that you are more likely to pick to be friends versus others, or why they lack self-confidence and how that came to be, and feeling that, okay, whenever I wanted to set a healthy boundary, the other person was not necessarily responsive to it, so that means I can't set boundaries. And it's mind-boggling but completely understandable, because how, if everyone they attempted to set healthy boundaries with declined, denied, did not accept, continued with whatever behavior was that the person asked them to not do, of course they're going to feel like, well, my words are powerless. So if my words are powerless, what does that really mean for my ability to bring change to my life? So, a lot of times, though we cannot change our past, we can grow from it by reflecting on how our experiences have shaped and molded us to be the people we are in our relationships. And a lot of times, someone will say and treat me, oh, well, it wasn't their intentions to hurt me. It's not that anybody really intends to ever set out to, inflict pain or cause harm in families and in relationships, but it still happens, and it's still very much their experience. And based on their experience, a healing has to take place so that they can recognize, okay, this person's or these people's actions affected me in this way. And because of it, my life has gone in some directions I really did not desire for it to go. But, I accept. In some cases, I forgive. In other cases, I understand. And because of that, this is how I am going to move forward in my life. Understanding boundaries are not for other people, they are for me. So other people are not necessarily going to be in agreement with my boundaries, but that does not mean that I should not exert boundaries. It just means if the person cannot respect what is okay in my space that helps me be the best version of me, then maybe they don't belong in my space, and that is okay.
True. You had to do the same thing when you were faced with a crossroads at 20.
Yes.
You could have blamed your mother, you could have blamed everyone and not choose to make a decision, you know. And when we take the responsibility, not that we blame people or blame anyone, but when you are able to take responsibility for where you are, there's nothing that you cannot do, I believe.
Right. Absolutely. Yes. And you're right. I very much was faced with that decision on my health journey. I was certainly faced with it as far as my family history goes, and just wanting to not have my kids feel the way that I felt at certain periods in my upbringing, and working to change that, and knowing, that I could, that I have the ability. And I'm not sure that that is necessarily something that was in play for generations that preceded me. So I can understand how, to some degree, my mother had her set of challenges, but due to my grandmother, and her role, there was not this, I can change this, I can deviate away from this path, because I realize how these actions and these behaviors have affected me, and I don't desire to continue that trend. And it's not to say that we are not scarred from our experiences. Those scars very much still exist, but it's, do we want to take that energy to continue, as you said before, to go down that unhealthy road that leads to damaged relationships, complicated and complex medical issues, or take that energy and put it to use on how to make healthy and positive changes to lifestyles, to relationships, to foster a positive outcome for self.
I believe today, in this day and age, we have so many things that we could do. Mm-hmm. We have the internet that gives us access to people all around the world. We have so much external stimuli that we have to overcome and not be taken away by it,
Yes.
And it causes even an unrest in people. I've seen individuals where they can't sit down without the television on, or music playing, or being on a computer with playing a video game. They become restless. Mm-hmm. Because I believe everything starts from the inside.
Yes.
We live inside out. The outside experience that we're seeing, the people in our lives that are unpleasant, the situations that are unpleasant, is the main culprit is the inside workings, our thought process.
Yes.
How we're responding. So you are helping people to identify, and to also, okay, you are in control.
Yes.
You can change your thought process and change your life.
Absolutely. The whole premise of cognitive behavioral therapy is, what is the quality and content of our thoughts, and how do those thoughts lead to certain feelings and then ultimately certain behaviors. And if we're able to change the way that we think about things, where it's more optimistic, it's more positive, it's rational. There's so many individuals that I work with who place high expectations on themselves to either be perfect. And, when we all hear that nobody's perfect. So, how are you expecting of yourself something that not one person on this earth, we know everybody has something, but those unrealistic expectations can place someone in a highly stressed state where they're constantly not even trying to meet their own expectations, but what they think other people want them to be and what other people want them to say and do. And they find that they're living their lives for other people. And it's tough to find happiness in that because you never know what people are measuring you by. And so a lot of the work that I do with the individuals I see is not so much focusing on what you don't have control over. We can't control other people. We can't control if other people are judging us and what they're judging us on. All we can do is control our thoughts. And if we're able to do that, it doesn't matter if someone is judging us or not. It doesn't matter if somebody likes you or not. You are living by your own expectations of what brings about happiness and what brings peace. And at the end of the day, that is what's most important.
Yeah, I believe reaching for outside satisfaction will result in disappointment every single time.
Yes.
If I have to create a different experience to feel happy, this happy thing, I believe that like we're saying right now, everything comes from the inside, and even the cognitive behavioral approach, talking about the inner working of things, of the way we think, process, and self-confidence it comes from self.
Right.
So we have to build the house from the inside that we want to build. I remember I saw this interview with the actor Will Smith a few years ago now, I should say. And he was being interviewed by Oprah Winfrey, I believe. And he was talking about the experience that he had. His father told he and his brother to build a wall because his father owned a store. And the problem was he didn't know how to build a wall. So it took him a couple summers, he and his brother, but they finally built the wall. And he said he learned something from that experience. He said he learned that he didn't need to learn how to build the wall. The only thing he needed to learn to do was lay one brick as perfectly as he could lay a brick. And through the process of doing that over and over again, he built a wall. And the same thing with our lives. Our lives could be outrageous and in a place that we do not want it to be in. And we think we're so far away from what we really desire.
Right.
But the only thing we need to do is do something right.
Yeah.
See achievement, no matter how small it is.
Right.
Working with a therapist, how small that is, you keep building on that.
Right.
And before you know it, you've built your wall.
Yes, that is so, so very true, because I would not have dreamed of being on this podcast. I would not have dreamed of, doing a presentation 2 to 3 weeks ago at a local gym here, because I did not have self-confidence. I did not feel good about myself, and I didn't think anybody wanted to hear anything I had to say. And it was the mindset of, okay, if I'm overweight, people are going to look at me and think a certain way about me. They're going to think, all of these negative things, and recognizing that that was not what was important. It was important for me to focus on what it would take for me to be healthy and for me to feel good about myself. And then in the process of learning, okay, if I had support that much sooner, somebody in my corner, guiding me, supporting me, lifting me up, that I would have come that much further on my journey sooner. And I did. At one point on the journey, I came across some amazing people in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Shout out to you guys over at the Y. And they were supportive, they were non judgmental, they were the most loving group of people I came across on my journey. And the support that they gave me at that time really drove home, my desire to be a support for other people and help them understand they are in control. They're very close to where they want to be. It's just having that support in place and that person believing that they have the ability to accomplish whatever it is that they set their mind and heart to do.
Yes, and I know that people, it's easy to become discouraged, like you said, but you have to have someone believe in you. It helps.
Yes.
But the most important thing is you believing in you.
Right.
And we have to cultivate that. Sometimes you may need somebody to, nudge you along a little bit.
Right.
But ultimately, everything is going to come back to you believing in you, because people could tell you all day, Natasha, you are so great. You do this and you do that. But Natasha has to believe.
Absolutely.
You have to come to a point where you said, you know what? That's true.
Yeah.
I am something else. I am good at this right here. And then you become confident. You keep building and building. And I know sometimes when someone enters therapy, for example, like I said earlier, things could just seem so far away.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember, you just need to begin doing one thing and build your confidence at that, and you begin seeing the difference that you desire. I know one of my favorite movies to watch is The Karate Kid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people have seen it, but the first one with Mr. Miyagi, it came out in the 80s, mid 80s, I think. And Mr. Miyagi was Daniel-san wanted to learn karate from Mr. Miyagi. And the problem was, when he came to learn karate, Mr. Miyagi had him waxing his car. He was like, wax on, wax off. Had him paint his fence. He had him sanding the deck, and he had him doing it a certain way. And Daniel-san, he got upset with Mr. Miyagi because he said, you know what? I came here to learn karate, and you have me doing your chores.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Miyagi said, come here. And he said, show me wax on, wax the car. And he began doing karate moves. And over the period of time, he noticed he was learning karate all the time.
Yeah.
The same thing with therapy or coaches, life coaches, teaching people. When it's something they're telling you to do that you don't necessarily understand, even though they're explaining it to you, you must give yourself into learning that whatever is being taught and giving your all to it. And you'll realize you're learning everything you need to know and to get out of the situation that you're currently in all the time. You only have to believe, and the belief is in yourself.
Yes, it is. It really, really is. And I mean, when I work with individuals who have depression or low self-confidence or frequent self-doubt, when we work on the use of positive affirmations, I am fill in the blank. I'll take it a step further, because I said, I can say all day to you, you are fill in the blank. And you might say, I am this, I am that. But if you don't believe it, the affirmation is not going to stick. It's not going to hold. And so when I have my clients work on these affirmations, I also say, hey, give me 2 to 3 supporting pieces of evidence as to why this affirmation is true. And that is to instill the belief in that person that I really am. I really exhibit these qualities because I do these things on a consistent basis. That makes me a kind-hearted person. That makes me compassionate. That makes me, smart, even though I didn't think I wasn't. But that belief is super important because without it, it's hard to bring about positive changes for sure.
Do you have any techniques or things that people could do to, I guess, build their inner strength in that way?
I would say it's really doing some self reflection. A lot of times, doubt and lack of confidence and difficulty with self expression comes from this perception that you're not going to sound competent and people are going to think that you're not smart or that, you don't know what you're talking about. So it's very much based on the reactions of other people. And I want to encourage anyone that is dealing with depression or frequent self doubt that it's really important to identify, how have you gotten to this point? There are all kinds of strengths that exist within your life if you are willing to look with a pair of strengths focused glasses. I like to use that analogy. When people are depressed and have low self confidence and they're wearing that set of glasses, everything that they say or they do is not good enough, or, people don't like it and they're not going to accept it. And I encourage them to take those glasses off and put on a different pair, one that they're able to see their strengths and their positives so that they can focus on what are the things that I've been doing and what are the things that I have done that have helped me get this far and get to this point. And the most depressed person will believe that those strengths don't exist, those positives don't exist. But the idea is that just because you are in a struggle or you're dealing with the struggle doesn't mean that it still didn't take strength for you to get up, to be on your job, for you to still be taking care of your family or an ill family member or spouse. So, despite the challenges that you face, you are still pressing on and helping other individuals, even in the midst of your pain. And I think that takes a lot of strength. So, part of starting to change this mindset is really reflecting on what do you do on a daily basis? What have you done throughout your life that has allowed you, though it's been tough on some days, to still be in this fight and taking those facets of life and of self and letting that be the fuel that propels you to call a therapist, to call a life coach, and really start to talk through what some of those challenges have been so that you can work to feel good about self at all times, whether or not you're doing something for somebody else.
And it sounds like people have strength that they don't recognize they have, even though they may be at their lowest point. Someone, as you were saying, who may be suffering with depression, they may not feel as though they're strong, but they do have some strength. And the acknowledgement of it, the self-awareness of it, you're able to bring forth as a clinician is so helpful because we are never usually without anything. It may appear that way, but we still have something within us that we can work with because they're always, but it just comes down to our awareness and our confidence in it because we have something to work with.
Yes, we do. Every human being, every individual, it's hard to find depending on how in the thick of it you may be or they might be, but that's the role of working with a coach or a therapist is you've got so many things going for you that you may not recognize that you just need to be supported in identifying. And it's using those strengths and those positives to help you resolve some of the challenges that might be faced.
So, what's the name of your company?
The name of my company is Perspectives Counseling of Northeast Florida.
Okay. So, you've given us a lot of insight and good information. What's your one to grow on? What valuable piece of information would you like to leave our audience with?
I would like everyone to know that you have the power and the ability to change what you desire for self. And all it takes is a decision about how you want to proceed, whether it's with your health, your mental health, your job, your family, your marriage, any relationships. It starts with a decision and exploring how can I contribute to these changes that I want to see. And so you have the ability, just because I always say this, and in fact, it's in my banner on my Facebook page, which is just because things have always been a certain way doesn't mean that that's always how it has to be. You have the ability to make the changes that you want to make. It's just a matter of thinking about what is best for you, your family, your career, your personal goals, and taking steps to make that vision or those visions come to fruition.